Coach Dharam here again in Golden Gate Park, talking to you about the sensory awareness practices that help with grief. And I've been speaking about grief as a disordering of arousal, but that's really a very simplistic way to look at a very complicated emotional process. And so I want to dive a little deeper into it and talk about pain and anguish. You can't speak about grief and pain and anguish without mentioning trauma. Now, not all grief involves trauma, but all trauma does involve grief. Trauma is an acute, critical injury to our being, whether body or to our minds, that impairs our ability to function. We need to address it or it will continue to impair our functioning and to cause us distress. What happens in the brain when we undergo injury or trauma is that not just are we having our reflexive reactions, but we are having our whole brain involved with processing the situation. So there will be emotional processing in our midbrain in the limbic system. There will be ideas and cognitive processing, and modulating and controlling all of those different regions is part of the brain called the hypothalamus. And that is sort of a master control board. And it's regulating not just which hormones go in the blood, but how much goes in and what's the rate of that amount, so that it can really fine-tune all of the systems in our organism, and we can adjust to whatever the situation is. Now, our limbic system is where we're processing emotion, and that takes all the information from the hypothalamus about what is this reflexive state of the body, what is our responsiveness, and then compares it in memory to what happened all the other times the body was in that state of arousal. What other contexts, what else was going on in the environment when, and how does this moment compare to those other moments of arousal? And the limbic system is a very complicated set of different cell bodies that are exciting each other or inhibiting each other in order to compare pictures of what happened in the past with what happens now, and to try to come up with a state of feeling, so that if this state of body arousal had happened in a context where I'm working out at the gym and having a good time and laughing with my friends, then that activity of heart and blood pressure and all is going to be read as happiness. And if I'm feeling that state of arousal when I'm driving and there's a red light flashing in front of me and a siren railing, then that state is going to be fear and caution and wide alert. And it's going to be very inhibiting. I'm going to want to slow down and stop. It's not going to speed me up and make my tumbling faster and better. So we have different qualities that our limbic system is then feeding back to the hypothalamus to give us an appropriate response to the situation. Our limbic systems are very socially in tune. They get a lot of information about how we should feel and what's the appropriate response based on what we've understood from other people throughout our lives, what responses people have had to us, and that we can read in their facial features, in their body language. We can attune ourselves to each other, and it does change our regulatory arousal when we are receiving positive, encouraging information from social experiences, or if we're getting negative, inhibiting, rejecting messages from other people. That very much does impact how we perceive ourselves. We've gotten all this information through our lives from other people. We build our personality around it. And we learn how to repress a lot of what our bodies tell us on the pure sensory level. We become more inhibited the more trauma we experience. We take less risk, or we take irrational risks, not caring what happens to us. Our behaviors can become very stereotyped, very predictable, without much range of trying new things or creativity. And this is a kind of emotional armoring, where we become rigid in our emotional qualities because of the injuries and the traumas that we have received socially and emotionally. The combination of physical and mental injury and mental trauma feels like pain. It is pain. The body experiences anguish as pain, the same way that tissue damage creates pain, and it can even lead to inflammation and actual tissue damage. Pain is a product of brain processing of all the stimuli it's getting from bodily sensations, emotional limbic sensations, thoughts, and ideas around trauma and memories of trauma, and all of the overall brain state of hunger or tiredness, and everything that's going on creates pain as a central nervous system product. That it's not just in the receptors in the skin or in the body that bring a pain message of what's going on with the organs and the tissues. It's all of that information processed together to create a brain state of pain. We can use our cognition, our attention, to affect the processing of all of those stimuli, all of those sensations and emotional responses, to help ourselves heal. And as a sensory awareness practice, we start with assessing our body all the time, checking in. Where is my body in space? Where is gravity? What feels good? What hurts? What is neutral? Just head to toe, toe back to head. Just being constantly attuned with what's going on inside me. Where am I right now? We can stay attuned to all of the changes and fluctuations of a normal state of being awake, being in our bodies and moving around. And then when we know ourselves, know what's good and what's neutral, we can enrich and enhance and absorb the goodness there, because this is where we're resourcing ourselves. And when we recognize where our strength is, we can build it as a resource. So if I notice that my right shoulder is just a little bit stiff, but my left shoulder is pretty okay, then rather than worrying and spending a lot of time, oh, what's wrong with my right shoulder, I'm going to also spend time, and maybe even a little more time, relaxing into, my left shoulder's okay, this is pretty nice. And then there's the pulsation of attention between, this is a little stiff, this is relaxed, okay, this is okay, it's a little less stiff, and I have just a little bit more motion on the right side because I'm linking with attention to where I have resources, where I have good feelings. And we can do that emotionally as well, with memories of positive, encouraging interactions with our friends, and remembering being at the gym, having my fun workout. When healing injury, the goal is to bring more movement. For a physical injury, it's the movement of fluids that bring oxygen and nutrients and can speed repair of the tissues or activate the stem cells to create new tissue and regrowth, and to bring mobility and functionality back into the body. And it's the same mentally, in that we want to return the flexibility of an open, receptive brain state to be able to be more creative and process information well and be able to make good choices and have fluidity of learning. We can use movement through our own actions, through that pulsing of attention, but also actual pulsing of muscular contractions, so that if we have a injury, a physical injury, say, sprained your ankle, you can do minor, tiny movements to feel out where the pain is, what can hold weight, what can't hold weight, and which muscles still respond, feeling out what the edges of the pain are, and the shape and the texture and the quality and characteristics of our physical pain. We can do that with our mental anguish also, of just tasting around the edges of where does it hurt, what can I hold, and pulse back. And this is where you use the motion. Pulse back between where you feel the pain, and someplace that is relaxed, is pleasurable, whether you're going back and forth between your memory of loss and your memory of joy, or if you're pulsing between my tense shoulder and my loose released shoulder, and finding that sometimes the other shoulder, the other place may fill up, and instead of diffusing, I have to find another place. Oh, okay, my belly's all right. And at some point, we may hit a threshold where we're not resourced anymore. We've used up all of the good feeling. There's no place to put our mind and to feel into our body that doesn't hurt. When our resources are full up, when we've hit our thresholds, we've got to know our capabilities and know when we exceed them, because when we exceed them, that is anguish, and we're not really capable of making our best judgments when we're in that level of pain. And that's the time to get help, to reach out and talk to somebody else and let them know things are bad now. Especially on the level of mental anguish. If you're finding that your thoughts are telling you that it would be much better to die now and be over with this than to be thinking, I wonder how I'm going to get through, and what's going to happen after this. If you're able to think about the future more than wanting there not to be a future, you're in better shape. But if you're at the point when you're even thinking about not wanting a future, that's when to call a friend, talk to somebody. You don't have to have one leg over the railing of the Golden Gate Bridge for them to want to talk to you. You just have to have filled up your own threshold. And it's important here now to not compare your pain to anybody else's. If you have run out of your own resources, that's the time to ask for help. If you're a friend who has someone asking you for help, it's important to be able to use your own resources so that you can be ready to receive their pain in a way that doesn't overwhelm you and disrupt your own regulation. Use your sensory assessment of where you feel good, where your relaxation is. Be able to pulse back and forth between how am I okay and holding the information that your friend is giving you of where they're sore or troubled or hurting. And that way, as a friend, we can help connect someone who is hurting with resources. I can call 911. I can find that crisis hotline number. I can be a bridge between the person in pain and those who have more information, more resources, more professional abilities to deal with that pain. And in the time of waiting for the professionals, the medics to arrive, my calm, my reassurance, my encouragement, my physical presence of my limbic system giving encouragement and care and compassion to somebody that's hurting will in itself start to calm the nervous system of the person in anguish. As we use our sensory awareness practice to keep attuned to our own body, our own mental states, our own pleasure and pain and comfort at every given moment, then we can help to pulse in and out of where we do feel sorrow or pain and diffuse those feelings and open up our receptivity to other feelings. If we're constantly paying attention to how we're doing, we can make those little adjustments and reach out in our actions, but also in our minds, to the positive, playful engagements and feelings that are still available to us. And when we are having our pleasurable moments, when we are sitting here in the park with the trees, breathing deeply, we can recognize this is our resource. This is how we are building our strength. This is how we're not just healing our bodies, but we're putting money in the bank of our ability to resource ourselves in the future by really absorbing the good times when they're happening and really savoring the pleasures that we have when we're spending time with people we love and getting all the warm, fuzzy, good feelings of social engagement and nature and music and all of the things that give you pleasure. And that becomes a resource for transforming ourselves and our grief into really the fullness of life and the abundance of experiences that we can draw from to feel good.